stands for advocate. A4ID stands for Advocates for International Development. It's a global charity that works in partnership with the world's leading law firms, barristers, and in-house corporate counsel to provide access to free legal advice and assistance for NGOs in the international development sector. So Joe and Luke will explain what they are, who they are, what they do, and illustrate many examples of their fantastic work and how to access their services. And obviously, there'll be an opportunity to to ask questions as well. And just on a personal note, both the charities that I'm involved with have used over the last few years the services of A4ID, and it's been absolutely fantastic. For example, for sorting out terms and conditions for a mentoring website, which obviously needed to be quite carefully constructed. They did that. They also sorted out a trademarks dispute for us as well. And we also had a problem with actually one of our contracts with actually one of our suppliers who and that actually needed some quite serious legal support, and they were absolutely fantastic. So Joe, thank you very much, and Luke, personally for providing this support. And as I say, it would have cost us an awful lot of money to have actually done it through a normal law firm. So again, being a small NGO, that was very good. So anyway, without further ado, I'll actually pass over to Joe and Luke to explain a bit more about what they do. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Peter. And yes, one of these days, I think we are going to do that piece of work on how much these pieces of work costs for an organisation. I think some of our charities have asked for that information so they can reflect it in their annual reports and their accounts as gifts in kind. And it really is in the tens of thousands. So it's a really great value of a service if you can manage to get it. So we've prepared some slides here and we can speak to them just by way of introduction. My name is Joe Tan. I'm the Pro Bono Legal Manager at A4ID, or Advocates for International Development, as it's known in its full term. We've been around for quite a long time. I've been previously a lawyer with a large international law firm and done various things in law, but in the last few years, I've worked primarily with charities, and being at A4ID, we act as the intermediary for the charities and the legal sector. So we're a nice sort of friendly way to get to bridge that gap and get you the services that you need. I'm joined by Luke, who I think can also introduce yourself, Luke, if you like.
Hi, thanks, Joe, and yeah, it's a pleasure to present to everyone today. And I'm the legal officer at A4ID, so I work with Joe. And just in terms of my background, I also worked at a corporate law firm for a few years, and I've transitioned into the international development sector, and I've been with A4ID for the last four years.
Good. So Luke, shall we kick off with the next slide, please? So this is just a bit of a background history to A4ID. We were born out of a desire to institutionalize the legal community's commitment to international pro bono. So following the 2004 Asian tsunami, a group of London-based city lawyers came together in partnership with Oxfam to provide pro bono legal support to help alleviate poverty in the areas impacted by the tsunami. That's the reason why we are named as we are, and we come from this background in international development, and that certainly is our niche. You can see in the image there our 10-year anniversary, which was held in St. Paul's, and Bishop Desmond Tutu spoke at that. Next slide. So this is our vision. It's quite a simple one: to see the law and lawyers playing their full part in the global eradication of poverty. But if you go on to the next slide, you'll see also in more detail that our mission is to be the authoritative voice of the legal community. So we inspire and enable lawyers to join that global fight against poverty. And we also ensure that legal support is available for those engaged in that fight. So we bring our legal partners together, and I'll speak more about that in due course, together with our development partners who need that particular legal expertise. The sorts of duties we have include taking due diligence on all our development partners. So we do that when they begin with us. And we scope their projects to make sure they're attainable, valuable, finite. So they're scoped so that there's a beginning, a middle, and an end, very importantly. That they are in a form that's understood by lawyers. And being intermediaries, we can put your language or the language of ordinary people in a language that sometimes lawyers can understand. Next slide is one on the Sustainable Development Goals. I'm sure most people are aware of this. If you're not, these are the 17 goals that were enshrined by a general resolution in the UN about 5 years ago. There are 17 goals all up, and these goals are really what underpin all our work. It is the architecture that everything is based on, and it comes up time and time again in various aspects of our work. For example, if you want to be a development partner, you have to demonstrate that you are meeting or advancing one of those goals. And there are other ways in which the SDGs play an important part in our work, but we'll go through that in a bit more detail further on. Just to say at this point that although there are 17 goals, certain of the goals do take a prominence in our work. Maybe they reflect the work of our development partners as well, but the ones that come up most frequently are SDG 1 on poverty, and this includes a lot of the humanitarian relief organizations. Also, SDG 5 on gender equality is a big one. One that doesn't show up but is now has overtaken a lot of these SDG 3 on health and well-being. I guess that you could say that flows directly out of COVID, the COVID pandemic. 10 is also an important one on reducing inequalities. And in recent years, climate action has taken prominence. Of course, 16 on peace, justice, and strong institutions is where a lot of the strength of our lawyers lie, obviously. And 17, finally, on partnerships, because that essentially is the way we work. So those are the key ones that seem to come up more often than not in a lot of our work. Next slide, please. So the agenda that we have is quite an ambitious one, as I said, of inspiring and enabling lawyers to in that fight against poverty, that we do through innovative industry-leading work, research, which you will find on our website, a lot of key publications on using the law in your work. And also we have a fairly robust monitoring and evaluation process in place. So at the end of each of all the work, all the projects, we have a feedback mechanism that really is our quality assurance mechanism. I have to say that, yes, A4ID has an international presence. We work globally. And we have on the ground a presence in Africa, in particular East Africa, in Nairobi, where we have a project lead. And we also have one in New Delhi that services our South Asian region. But we operate globally. So we also do work in South America, Latin America, Caribbean, and of course, Southeast Asia. Next slide. And this is just, I think, the beginning your section, Luke, if you'd like to explain the international brokerage service that we have.
Great, thanks. Thanks, Joe. And yeah, so Joe and I work in the pro bono legal services team, and we operate an international pro bono broker service, which brings together our network of legal partners with our network of development partners who require their legal advice in over 120 jurisdictions around the world. So the service we're really offering is to our development partners is we offer our legal partners provide the highest quality pro bono assistance to our development partners. And in turn, for our legal partners, we undertake a comprehensive due diligence on all new organizations that need legal assistance to confirm their projects are tenable and valuable. So just looking at these two networks, starting with our legal partners. So our legal partner network includes some of the world's leading law firms. We also work with many independent law firms, in-house counsel of corporates, and barrister sets, and also individual barristers. So in total, our network includes over 57,000 individual lawyers spread around the world. And this slide illustrates some of our legal partners. And just to kind of highlight our network, the bulk of our legal partners are the large corporate law firms, which are full service firms, meaning they provide the full range of legal services. And many of these are UK headquartered firms, including Magic Circle firms, such as Clifford Chance, Linklaters, and Allen & Overy, and also other leading UK law firms such as Norton Rose, Fulbright, Travers Smith, and CMS. Also, obviously A4ID was founded in the UK in London, but over the years the network has grown. And increasingly, our network includes large, prominent US law firms. And this has kind of been linked to the US law firms increasingly growing their presence in the US. So this would include Kirkland and Ellis, Latham and Watkins, Sullivan and Cromwell. It's great to have these US legal partners on board because the culture of pro bono within the US firms is especially strong. And this also, just to note, so obviously this includes most of these firms are international firms, so they have offices spread out across the world, and they're particularly strong, obviously in London, in the UK, in US, throughout Europe, Asia, and then kind of to varying degrees in different regions. Because we are focused on international development, we've also developed a network of strong legal partners in countries in the global south. And some of these are included here. Our network is particularly strong in South Asia and East Africa. We also work with barrister sets in London. So often they will do litigation-related work, and this would include brick court chambers. We also partner with the in-house counsel of corporates, such as Accenture, and some of these corporates have very large legal teams, and they also spread out across the globe. And just also to emphasize, so we have our formal network of legal partners, but we also have informal relations with law firms kind of all across the globe. So then just turning to our development partners. So we have a network of over 930 development organizations. So these range from large international NGOs, national and multinational agencies. We also partner with developing country governments, small civil society groups, social enterprises, developing country law societies, and bar associations. And just in terms of the criteria to register as a development partner, just to flag it, and I think just from the introductions, I think I think everyone present is actually an existing development partner, but just to reiterate in case anyone's joined the call. So to qualify, we have some criteria. So you need to be a charity, an NGO, or a social enterprise. You would need to be working towards advancing at least one of the 17 sustainable development goals that Joe mentioned. And we also require that the beneficiaries of your organization are in a low to middle income country, although we do have a few exceptions for this, for refugees, climate and renewable energy organizations, and racial justice, where we say it doesn't matter really where your beneficiaries are, we'll support these organizations. And to get onboarded, we have a light touch due diligence. It's a really straightforward process whereby you complete a questionnaire and provide us with a copy of your annual report, and then we would undertake a quick due diligence and onboard the organization. So just looking at the actual brokerage process, I'll just quickly take you through the process. So it initiates when one of our development partners obviously becomes aware of a legal issue where they need assistance, whether this is a contract review or they need employment advice. So the first step would be to get in touch with Joe or myself, flag that request, and also complete a project summary form. And on the next slide, I'll just run through what that looks like with everyone. So we will work with you during the week to develop that request and finalize it into a scoped legal request. And as we mentioned earlier, we both, A4ID is not providing legal advice, but both of us are qualified lawyers. So we'll work with you to really scope your project and understand which legal issues you need assistance with. So every Monday, we will then circulate these scoped legal requests to our legal partners, and it goes out to this network. And the requests are circulated every Monday at noon. So our legal partners will receive a list of these requests. It's usually about 10 projects covering different areas of law in different jurisdictions. They'll review those requests, and they have a week to look and see if they have the expertise and capacity to take on your request. So we'll circulate the request on the Monday. The following Monday, we will update our development partners and say, whether we've received a bid or bids on your requests. And if we have received a bid, we'll notify you the following Monday. Then we'll get the law firm that they have to clear their conflicts. Law firms have to do it with all new matters. It's just a quick KYC check. And once that's cleared, then we will proceed to introduce you to the legal team. And they will act as your pro bono lawyers. Generally, A4ID doesn't get involved with the legal advice, but if you do have any kind of issues with working with the lawyers, we are contactable. Just get in touch with us, whether the law firm, if there's a bit of delay with getting the advice. Generally, it's not really an issue. If we circulate a request, and if after 1 week we haven't received a bid, we'll inform you of that. And then we'll recirculate your request. And then we will start actively going out to our legal partners and seeing which law firms and which jurisdictions can assist you. So we'll proactively then start trying to place your request. So just quickly looking at the project summary form. So we've developed the standard template, just kind of explains how to complete the form. And I'll quickly just run through it. And it's broken down into 6 sections. So when you identify, say you have an employment matter you need assistance with, your first step would be complete this form and send it back to us. And just to quickly go through the section. So the first section is just an overview. And it will include a bit of background about your organization, explain your work. It's an opportunity, obviously, kind of promote your work and reach out to the law firms and motivate, why you're a good organization to receive pro bono assistance. And then you'll provide a bit of background around, why you need the legal advice. And then in the final section, in the overview section, is just looking which of the sustainable development goals your specific request impacts, because that's how we measure our impact at A4ID. And then the next section is the description of work, and it's probably the most important section of this form, and the section where Joe and I will help you extensively to scope it, because the lawyers want a very clear, concise explanation of what legal advice their lawyers actually need to undertake. The next section then is on the use and likely impact of the systems. And as that states, you obviously say, what the advice will be used for, whether it's you need it for internal purposes or whether you need the advice to negotiate a contract with a third party. And then we'd also want you to provide some information about the impact of the project. And just also on that, so, once we broker a project between yourself and a law firm, once that project is closed, we also undertake a feedback call with our development partners to understand the impact of the project down the line, and also understand the quality of the legal services and our services, and really how we can improve our service. And then the next section is, we would need to include the parties involved, which would, always be the development partner. And then if there is another party, say a third party that you're contracting with, you'd need to put that information in there. And that's just for the law firms to clear their conflicts. The next section is on timescale, and that's just the estimation of by when you need the legal advice. So obviously the law firms are doing this pro bono, and they're doing this alongside their billable work. So generally, as a rule of thumb, the more time you can allow the lawyers to do the work, the greater the likelihood they'll be able to take on the project and complete it within that time frame. So if possible, the more time you can give the lawyers, the better. Generally, we say, kind of as a rule of thumb, we allow the lawyers 6 weeks to do a project. But obviously, if the advice is urgent and you need the advice in a week or two, we will circulate the project on an urgent basis. It does make it a little bit more challenging to place the request, but generally the uptake of urgent projects is quite good. And then finally, is a team. And again, Joe and I will really work with you to finalize that. And that's really just identifying which lawyers you need and which jurisdiction and what specific expertise that they need to complete the work. So just in terms of the kind of projects that we deal with, it's really, we deal with pretty much all different areas of law. Probably the only exception to this is criminal law, because our legal partners generally just don't do criminal law. But our development partners basically don't really need criminal law advice outside maybe white collar crime issues. And just looking at the kind of main areas of law in the 2020-2021 financial year, 19% of them were corporate law matters. And a lot of these are around setting up a nonprofit entity in different jurisdictions, issues around viewing corporate policies. And I know that's very popular if you're applying for grants just to get your house in order. Employment was really popular, and a lot of it is around COVID, also around working remotely. Commercials was also popular. A lot of that is contract reviews, looking at grants, etc. Data protection is also popular. But just really to emphasize, it's all kinds of different advice that we can potentially assist with. So it's really, we get kind of the full range of requests. So just quickly to look at a couple of case studies just to illustrate, some of the work we've brokered in the past. The first project we brokered between Allen and Overy and Child Hope. So Child Hope is a charity established in response to the growth in the numbers of street children around the world. So in 2017, Child Hope was successful in its application to extend a DFID, so obviously now FCDO funded program in Ethiopia. And the funding was for its Girls Education Challenge Step Change program. to enable girls to enroll, stay, and thrive in school. So Child Hope approached us because they received the grant documentation from DFID, which was quite, in their view, quite onerous, quite ambiguous and uncertain. And they were specifically concerned because this grant was in respect of an extension of the first phase of their program. And this was to cover the phase 2. And there was a kind of a gap between phase 1 and phase 2. And it wasn't clear from the grant documentation whether Child Hope would receive funding to cover that kind of gap between those 2 phases. And Child Hope was quite concerned, and they wanted legal advice and assurance around that. So Allen and Overy's lawyers were able to clarify with DFID that this documentation was actually subject to kind of continued negotiations and amendments. And it would be possible to kind of renegotiate some of these terms after the document had been signed, because DFID was kind of putting a bit of pressure on Child Hope just to sign it. And yeah, so just with this case study, just really to emphasize, if you ever get a grant and you're just unsure of the terms, often you can't negotiate, obviously, with FCDO, but it's just really useful to get peace of mind from a lawyer, get legal advice about exactly what you are signing. You can also get a legal team to speak with the FCDO just to kind of clarify any issues and just kind of make sure you're best placed to kind of move forward with your program. And another case study was a project we brokered for Health Books International, and they were a small charity, and they provided medical information to health workers in developing countries. And they approached us because they'd been having ongoing financial difficulties, and they had lost a major donor, and they were essentially in a position where they had to close the organization due to lack of funding, unfortunately. But their real concern was they had built up, they were a really small charity, but they'd built up a very large stock of health books, and they'd also developed a website with a lot of useful information. And they were kind of concerned if the organization got closed, what would happen to their stock, because that really was their mission. And they wanted just to really preserve it. So they wanted advice around kind of winding the organization down and seeing what their options were in terms of preserving their valuable stock and essentially their mission. So Decad's lawyers took this project on, and I remember it was just before Christmas I worked on this project. It was, they took on the project, they gave health book advice around closure. They also made a really useful suggestion around, had health books considered merging with another charity doing similar work and potentially handing over, their stock and their website to the charity. And then health books actually had kind of very tentative discussions with Practical Action Publishing. And from that, Decad assisted health books with negotiating with Practical Action, and they actually took on the entire merger process. So they kind of supported health books through several months to merge with Practical Action. And then, the feedback from health books was the advice we received from Decad has allowed our charities work to live on where it otherwise would not have. I'm happy to say the organization's website still exists. It's managed by Practical Action Publishing, and this is just a good example of really how committed and flexible our legal partners are to kind of supporting our development partners. So yeah, thank you, and I think I'll hand back to Joe.
Thanks very much, Luca, for that. And just to say, with that last example, insolvency practitioners aren't there just to close organizations down. As you heard in that case, that really was to assist on a merger. And one of the key things we often like to emphasize with our development partners and try to get them to think more of is about how they can use the law proactively. So insolvency practitioners also include a lot of turnaround specialists. So if you get in there early, sometimes they can actually save an organization from what might appear to be an imminent closure. But yeah, the key takeaway from that is to get in early. There's no such thing as being too early, and try to sort of look at preventative things to put in that you can establish and put in place to prevent things going wrong in future. So this is one such service that we offer, which it goes to the very heart of that. It's called our legal health check. And the legal health check it's like a due diligence. It goes through about 15 areas of law. We pair a development partner up with a legal partner, and they go through a questionnaire. There's about 150 questions. It does involve some investment of time from the development partner, but as we say, as we often say, that time will often save you a lot of heartache further down the line, perhaps, if you can just invest that bit of extra time now. And so what happens, and this process could take weeks, it's been known to take a year in one instance. We understand how busy and time poor and resource poor a lot of charities are, but it does involve sometimes running around looking for contracts and so forth. But at the end of it, what you get is a report written up by the law firm about all the areas that they've gone through and analysed, and they will identify any gaps in there, any deficiencies, any work that could be taken out. And that report then serves as a very useful purpose of then generating those projects. So that comes back to us in brokerage. And from that, we will then use that to generate projects to go out to the law firms, and they will do that work. The law firm that does the actual legal health check, though, does have a first option to do any of the work that it identifies. And often they will do what they can. But the balance of that, the surplus, comes back to us, and we will put those projects out. Next slide. This is just a list of the areas that we go through. It's quite comprehensive. You'll see there, they look at the structure and the governance. So that's corporate structure, and whether the structure of the organization is working as well as it should, or it should move on to an alternative structure. It looks at all your employment contracts, including your consultancy contracts, and then all your partnership agreements and third-party contracts, any property issues if you're leasing, assets, liabilities and funding. So these are all about your grants. If you have any debt or equity, that is also looked into by our finance lawyers. Any tax issues, IP, again, another big area of demand on us, and disputes.
No.
Yes.
I'm really sorry. I'm aware of the time, and rather than go through all of this, each of these things, I've got some questions I'd like to ask before I go, and I don't know if there's many more slides to go through.
There's not, but no, we're happy to take questions now. Yeah.
I mean, this is all fantastic. It really is. And I'm gutted that I didn't know that we were signed up and registered with you already. I mean, we have I mean, most of our legal requirements are actually, we need an urgent phone call with a lawyer to check something.
Right.
Normally about employment law. And we just need to know if we need to do this or this or this, or have we missed something? And we just need a 10-minute phone call with someone who knows, to check whether we're doing it right.
Yeah.
I don't know if we can come to you and ask if we can do that if you've got someone we can have a quick call with?
Yeah,
Or,
that's a good question. So employment law is probably one of the areas of highest demand for us. We do have a demand supply issue there, because not all of the big law firms have a huge employment team. So sometimes not all employment matters will get taken up. Having said that, that's an important point, because it does then, we are, often rethinking about the ways we can offer our services. And I have often thought about how we can build something that will be a very faster, more responsive way of dealing with a lot of our employment issues, because very often many of them just require a 10-minute call, as you mentioned. I was going to go on to one of our services in a minute. We have got these legal clinics up the ground, and I think that's still, got a lot of scope for development. And I was thinking maybe that we could develop an employment law clinic, because it is such an area of demand. And that would be very well suited to that sort of, to the sort of thing you're talking about. But yeah, no, point taken, we'll take that on board. And definitely that we'll prioritize that as something that we try and look at for our development partners.
I mean, I might come over to you with a request, because in the new year, because we might need to know what our situation, or how to handle what parameters we're gonna have to work with a member of staff who looks like she's going to be diagnosed with ADHD.
Yeah, so things like that we can are quite we can deal with quite. That's fairly standard sort of issue, yeah, we can talk afterwards.
Okay.
Got my contact details. We can have a more detailed discussion about that.
Okay. But do I contact you through the website?
So my email details are on the website. Yeah, you can find them there.
Okay.
It's also at the end of, and I'll also put them in the chat box.
Oh, great, thanks. But this is a fantastic, a really amazing work that you do. And when I was running, I ran a social enterprise in Kampala, and before that an NGO in Kampala. I would have found A4ID an enormous blessing to be there. I can tell you, most corrupt place in Africa, jointly with Nigeria now.
Yeah, I mean, and we do, as you point out, we do assist social enterprises in the startup phase. And by startup, that's quite flexible. That goes up to a big, equity raise. But it's I mean, I think a lot of people who don't know about our service, I mean, once they've used us and got a result, they'll find it's very simple to use us and very easy. But also it's also incredibly helpful if you can find,
Although I would have struggled, I suspect, keeping myself out of jail with you.
Yes, we do have some criminal lawyers. Actually, it was in Kenya, and this was a case of some nurses in a charity who were were at risk of being jailed imprisoned for because obviously abortion laws are still in place in
Yeah.
Kenya.
Yeah.
And they were someone had been distributing abortion, or I can't recall if it was medication or a procedure, but the nurses had flown into Kenya and suddenly this blew up. So we kept them out of jail in that instance. So,
Yep.
we do more than the white collar the sort of business related work as well.
Do you have any legal partners in South Sudan?
That one's a bit tricky. Obviously, in the post-conflict countries, it's a bit of a challenge. There's been a brain drain, obviously, of a lot of lawyers who have left because of conflict and so forth. But I think recently, look, maybe you might correct me if I'm wrong, there was a project in South Sudan, wasn't there?
Yeah, I can't recall off the top of my head, but I mean, we can quite quickly check if we do have contacts in the country if you do need assistance.
Yep. Okay. We have projects in Sudan, South Sudan, Central African Republic,
all the easy ones.
Yeah, well, we're peace builders, so we don't go to the the pleasure spots.
Yeah, well, yeah, those are all quite challenging jurisdictions to find lawyers.
And I mean, just to also maybe flag, like we do have colleagues in Kenya and Rwanda that have developed close relationships with lawyers throughout the region. And we also have a partnership with the East Africa Law Society, which is a grouping of lawyers from that region. So yeah, we can always flag it with them. They're really good at identifying lawyers.
Yep.
Maybe if I can just quickly go through the rest of the slides.
I'm so sorry. Could you send them to me?
Sure, absolutely. Email them to you. If you send me your email.
Yep, I'll put it in the chat box.
Okay, great.
I'm so sorry to duck out.
That's fine.
So early.
We'll have more of a discussion after about some of the matters you're facing.
But I'm so impressed by what you do, and I come from an old legal family, and which has merged, is now Taylor Garrett. And if they're not signed up to you, you let me know and I'll get my dad.
Thanks, Emma.
But all power to you. If I wasn't hosting this next Zoom chat, then I would be late for it. But the Zoom call but I'm really sorry.
That's fine.
A quick note, which probably would be covered, but A4ID also do NGO training, and I did attend a really good section about GDPR when that came in a few years ago now. But they actually, I think, Joe, you probably had loads of inquiries about people wanting information about GDPR, so you decided to organise a session, and that was a really good.
There was someone asking in one of the groups about GDPR training yesterday.
Okay.
Any chance about doing some more? Because I'd be really interested in that.
Yeah, we can always do more. And all our training, by the way, is well, not all, but a lot of it is initiated by the development partners. So we very much rely on feedback and engagement with our partners to tell us what they want, because we're demand driven, and all the requests for training go through brokerage. So you can have it as a bespoke one just for your organization, but very often we will ask if we can open it up to other development partners as well, and then it becomes a public training event.
Okay.
So that's how that works.
Okay.
Okay.
Awesome. I'm so sorry to leave you, but you guys are fantastic, and thank you so much to Lucy and Peter for organizing this. I really appreciate it.
Thanks very much, Emma.
Really quite appalled at my colleagues that I'm the only one left standing, as it were. They probably all know you really well. But again, thanks. I'll be in touch.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Bye.
Cheers.
Thanks, bye.
As we're still actually recording, Joe, it'd probably be a big
Yes.
thing to sort of go through the rest of the slides.
Sure, yeah,
And,
happy to.
yeah.
As you can see, those are the areas we cover in our legal health check. Luke, if you want to move on to the next slide, then we can talk about some. Okay, so this is just a case study of a very small NGO. This, I think, had 2 directors, and one of them basically a one-person charity. And they worked with ensuring adequate access to insulin for type 1 diabetes sufferers around the world. They had one of these legal health checks done, and one of the areas that came out of it was their data and protection policies. They got that looked at, and very often people come to us to do the legal health check before they put in a grant application, because that will basically flush out all the issues. If you need any policies drafted, that will make sure that they're all in place by the time you go for your application. So that's a great sort of checklist of things that you should do, and one that, you know, very much has the law firm holding your hand through that process. And this is our global legal development clinic, which is a fairly new service we've developed, but we've piloted it, tested it a couple of times now, and it's ready to scale up. And it's quite flexible in the way it works. Fundamentally, we will choose 10 to 12 development partners who we think might be well suited for this sort of service. So the sorts of development partners we're looking at are really new ones who perhaps have never had very much to do with the law or met a lawyer or had any dealings with the law. Also ones that were really time poor but had lots of quite impactful projects and work that had to would really benefit from getting some of that looked at. So that's the sort of target development partner that we're looking at. We select 10 of them, and this was pre-pandemic times. They would have a session with a team of lawyers from the law firm, about 6 or so. That would be a bespoke sort of team that was very much selected on the basis of what the issues that were flagged by that particular development partner. They'll sit there on an evening for about 2 hours, and they'll just talk through some of these issues. Now, some of these issues could be addressed on the spot. Others would need to be developed into a project. And the lawyers there will actually draft the project summary form for the development partner, and then it's ready to go, come to the brokerage. Again, one of the benefits for the firm that's hosting one of these clinics is that they get first option over any of the projects. And I've just got some stats on the impact of the clinic. In the first one, we trialed where we had, I think, 11 development partners. 12 projects came out of that from 5 development partners. So that was about 1 to 3 projects per week over the next number of weeks. And the host in that instance, it was Latham and Watkins, exercised first option rights on 8 of the 12 projects. So 3/4 of them they took on. Now, this firm would not normally take on that many projects, but they took on 8 in one go. And furthermore, 100% of the projects that came out of that clinic were placed. So the other 4 were placed with other legal partners. That goes to show that that there is something in there that is working, and we will try to develop this. And as I said, it's quite flexible. We can have clinics for just a specific area like employment law, as mentioned before. We are thinking about having clinics in Africa now because during the pandemic, we trialed a virtual clinic, and that seemed to work quite well as well. This is our Raw UK program. It's funded by the FCDO. I won't say too much about this, but this is really about matching rule of law experts from the UK with their counterparts in the Global South to work on a pro bono legal project that's going to benefit one of the countries over there. The organizations that tend to benefit most from these are the legal organizations, lawyers who tend to use this quite well. Next slide, thanks. And of course, we've got a learning and development team that does a lot of the training for lawyers, because we, as I'll show on the next slide, primarily are focused on development partners, and we do the training for the development partners. But there are also a lot of publications on our website, so if people want to have a look at some of those, and they should feel free to. Next slide, thanks. And this is just a list of some of the recent trainings that we've had. The areas run from modern slavery to anti-money laundering and anti-terrorism financing, bribery and corruption, sanctions, all very relevant for international development organizations. Of course, GDPR, as we mentioned before. For the campaigning organizations, our defamation training is quite important, and we've actually got a request to get one up. So one will be put on very shortly. And of course, employment. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see that one of our very recent trainings was actually one we did with Bond, and that was for the employment group. And this is all about the latest trends and emerging issues to come out of the working from home setup that many organizations are now having to deal with. And also, we also did one on FCDO contracts shortly after the cuts were announced, and that was quite useful as well for organizations having to renegotiate their contracts with the FCDO. And I think that brings us to the end of the presentation. If you go to the next slide, Luke, our details are on there. So if anyone wants to contact us, please feel free to either Luke or myself, and we'll be more than happy to help you out with some of your legal issues.
Thank you very much indeed for that. For that talk. Yeah, if there are any sort of general questions which people may have watching this video recording, then you have the email addresses there to send a query in. But as actually Emma said earlier on, and I reinforce that what an amazing service that A4ID do offer us, because they have saved us a lot of I really think actually in the contract dispute we had, it may have been that we could not have continued. So it was as simple as that. So again, thank you very much, A4ID.
And thanks for your support, Peter. I mean, word of mouth is really important for us, and that's how we get known. So yeah, thank you for your support, and for Bond as well, who are themselves a development partner, and we support them in other ways as well. But yes, glad to be of help. Okay.
Actually, I just had one question regarding the legal health check. I mean, how long? Yeah. You were mentioning that organisations will often request a legal health check when they're going for a big grant or whatever. And how long does that process usually take? I mean, I realise that companies or organisations are big or small, but yeah, how long does that usually take?
Okay. So with the legal health check, although it's again flexible and it can adapt to different circumstances, it is possible to completely leave out certain areas. So you don't have to have all 15 areas. if you wanted to have a scaled down legal health check with just some of those areas, that is entirely possible. And that will probably take a shorter amount of time. But I would say sort of in the ballpark figure, you're looking at about two months at the very least, to 6 months. But like I said, like some organizations have taken over a year to get that done, because it stopped and started, and it's a flexible process. The lawyers like them because they can also fit that around their work. It's a bit more flexible, and the development partners also seem to like it also, for the same reason, I guess. But yeah, it can take as long or as little time as you like.
Any further questions? Welcome to Fernacina. If you've got any thoughts, Fernacina, where are you from actually? Which organization are you from?
Hi, Peter.
Hi.
Thank you. Thanks very much. So I am from Safe Abortion Action Fund. Yeah, and I am based in Nairobi.
Okay.
I thought this was an open webinar. So I just signed up because I'm interested. We found a few partners across Sub-Saharan Africa and Latin America. And because we deal with abortion issues, some of them encounter legal issues. And we've had cases in the past where organizations have been in need of pro bono lawyers because they can't afford it. It's very expensive. So that's why I signed up to join this webinar.
Yeah, I mean, Fernacina, I don't know if you had heard, but East Africa is one of our strong focal areas. We have a project lead based in Nairobi, and we also do a lot of work in the sexual reproductive space. So MSI, Murray Stopes, for example, is one of our development partners, but we've done, I don't know if you're here and you heard about the charity of nurses who have been prosecuted under the abortion laws. Not potentially could have been charged. And we found pro bono lawyers for that. That was in Kenya as well. So yeah, please feel free to have a word with either Luke or myself. We'd be very happy to help.
Thank you.
Okay. Probably, I don't think there are any more questions. Once again, thank you, Joe and Luke, for this presentation, and keep up the good work. That's what I say. Okay.
Thanks, Peter. Have a good day. Bye.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks. Bye-bye.
And thank you, Lucy, for hosting as well.
Yes, thanks, Lucy.
Of course, my pleasure. Thanks.
See you.
Goodbye.
Bye, everyone.